We are live. It is Wednesday night. Right now I'm live from Connor's Music, but we're going to bring in some guests to deliver a session called Recording 101. So for those of you that have tuned in for that, welcome. If you're just on our Facebook page, just joining because you saw something's going live here, then we'll just quick introduction here. Recording 101 is just a free introduction to home recording. So any questions you have about setting up your own little home studio to do some recording, make sure you throw them in the comments. We've got Ray Wilson, who's a pro audio specialist from Yorkville Sound, and Chris Gauthier, also from Yorkville Sound, our sales rep. And we're going to be bringing them live here in a second. And like I said, any questions you have, throw them in the comments, whether you're watching on YouTube, on our Facebook page, or on Twitch. And they're going to do their best to answer them. But we've got a great presentation here. So without further ado, let's please welcome to the stream Ray and Chris. How you doing, guys?
Hey, good. How about you?
Hey, guys. Good.
Good to see you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Recording 101. It's going to be a fun session. This has been, first of all, my name is Ray Wilson. I'm a National Sales Manager for Yorkville Sound and Pro Audio Specialist as well. In behind me, a good 6 feet away, is Mr. Chris Gauthier. He's the District Sales Manager for Yorkville in Eastern Ontario. And we've done this show across Canada many times. It should be pretty straightforward and fun. But the cool thing is there's a question board I've got just here on my left that I should be able to answer as I see them pop up. If you'll hit the space bar for me, Chris.
Of course.
So basically, we're going to answer two questions today. The first question is, I want to record myself. What do I need to do that? And the second question is, all right, so I bought my gear. How do I hook it up? And I remember when I worked in music retail, that was the two biggest questions that customers would ask. And some people came in with the sense that they had to spend, thousands of dollars to do it. Some thought that they could never do this. It was just too much to learn. But you'll see tonight that it's actually not as daunting as you might think. It's pretty straightforward, and I'm going to get right down to every connection you want to see is on camera. Every way to hook something up is on camera. How to use the software is on camera. So you'll be able to see a number of views as well as a PowerPoint presentation. So, maybe you can take some notes from this if you want to, but I think without further ado, let's hop right into it. Chris, can we hear you?
Check 1, 2. Can you hear me, everybody?
I think we can. So if anybody has any comments about the audio or not loud enough, too loud, whatever, please let us know. You're also better if you can be in stereo. So if you have stereo computer speakers, that would be great because we are going to do some mixing tonight as well. And yeah, you know what? If you have the opportunity, even throw some questions or throw some comments up to say that you're here. So let's get started. All right. So up on the screen, you're going to see the start of our presentation. So let's just dive right into it. So for Recording 101, there's hang on here. There's a few things we want to get to. I'm hitting the wrong buttons. So let's dig into that very first question. What do I need? Well, here's some of the things that you're going to need. You're going to need a computer. Now, there's a number of ways that you can do recording. You can have standalone units. You can even have tape units, your Zoom recorders, etc. We're going to deal with the computer recording tonight because almost everybody has a computer, if not 2 or 3. And you'll come to realize that over time, this is really the least expensive way to do it as well. You might as well use the tools that you have, right? So you need a computer. You also need an audio interface, and I'm going to talk about that quite a bit tonight. An audio interface is just really a fancy way to say, a fancy way to connect up your guitar and your microphone. Next thing you're going to need is a microphone, and of course you're going to need a cable as well. Now, I'll bet many people actually have a microphone. A lot of people ask me, I have an SM58 because I play live. Can I use that in the studio? And the answer is a resounding yes, of course you can. In fact, any microphone that you have, you'll be able to use. We'll talk about the differences in those as we move along. Next thing you're going to need, some headphones. Now, again, a lot of people ask, well, can I use my earbuds for my iPhone or my Android? And again, the answer is yes. I'll talk more, though, about what exactly the differences are getting into an earbud or an over-the-head style headphone. Next, you may need some studio monitors. Now, you may say, I've got some speakers with my old stereo system. Can I use those? And again, the answer is yes. Are they going to be an appropriate studio monitor? Well, we'll talk about them and why they're different, and you'll make the decision from there. And finally, you're going to need things like a mic stand, pop filters, the things that stop your sound when you're singing, and cables and miscellaneous pieces. So let's dig in and let's talk about those things in detail and see if you've got the things that you need to get going. Now it's funny, a lot of people go to the music store, maybe you stop in at Connors and you say, I feel really ambitious, I want to get all my stuff. So you start talking to somebody at the store and you say, listen, I really only just want to record myself with my voice and my guitar maybe. Where do I get started? Well, I'm going to give you some examples of items you may not even know exist, and you also may not know that they're really inexpensive. So let's talk about them. So a basic setup example would be an ART USB Dual Pre PS. Now let me show you what that is.
Still in the box.
Yeah, still in the box. So it looks just like this. What it is an audio interface. So I'll just give you a quick show on this, but we're going to dig in deeply. And actually, let me just go to the screen. Sorry, now you can see what it looks like. I just opened it up. So there you go. That's what it looks like. And it's an audio interface. Let me just open this up and show you what we're looking at here. So it's got a USB cable in it. It's got the actual device itself. You can see in the front here, it's got 2 microphone jacks, or they're actually, since they're multi-jacks, you can even plug a guitar into that. But again, we'll dig into that as we move along. So yeah, the first thing you're going to need is an audio interface. So the USB Dual Pre PS is a good example of that. It's $99, so not sure what your perception of cost would be for that, but that's pretty much where they start. Now the next thing that you're going to need is a microphone. Now today I brought a microphone with me called the Apex 435B, and essentially it looks just like this in the box. That's what the actual microphone looks like. I'm getting some glare there. And I'm going to hand this to Chris eventually to get him to open it up. And this is all new stuff, so we're going to open it up, tear it apart, hook it up to the stands, and actually show you what's going on. So there's an example of an Apex 435. Comes in a really nice case as well. I might as well toss this box, I guess, and we'll keep this case handy, and we'll open up that mic really, really soon. So the next thing that you're going to need is a set of headphones. Now, I keep this particular set of headphones by my desk because I love them. So this is what they look like. They don't look like anything necessarily fancy, but the idea with them is they're actually designed for recording. So, nice and lightweight. And if you get into recording, you'll find that you can spend a lot of hours doing it. So you really want something lightweight. This is an HP 70, and again, the only reason I don't have some new in a box is because we shipped the last of them to Connors. So this is what they look like, and yeah, we'll talk about these a little bit more in a bit. Now, if you want to, you can get into some studio monitors. Now, I didn't really need them tonight because you can't hear them, so we're going to just connect directly into the system. But essentially, studio monitors, you can see some egg-shaped ones, I think, in the background there. I can't get my finger to work the right way. Here we go. There's some egg-shaped ones there. That's an example of a studio monitor. Those are dedicated to recording, and they're just tuned a little bit differently than the speakers that you might have in your home. But they would sell for roughly $400 a pair. Just moving along. If you bought the first 3 things, a microphone, headset, and the USB Dual Pre, you'd be spending $298.98. Now, I don't know of anybody that walks into the store and says, hey, I want to get started recording really at world-class quality, better than what the Beatles would have had to work with in the early days. They had this other thing, though, called talent, which is also important. So if you want to get started for $298.98, you can. And I mean, we're talking about really getting started. This system will sound great. Microphone will sound great. You'll end up with excellent results from your recording, as you're going to hear tonight. Now, if you wanted to take it a step further and get the studio monitors, you're talking about $700 plus taxes. And that really sets you up as a full studio. So again, headphones, microphone, interface, and studio monitors really allows more than just one person to enjoy mixing and tracking. So that's what a basic setup looks like. And I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of these types of setup walk out of stores, and you know, I know that if you went in that direction, you would see the same. So
You could pick up all of these items and then more in different variations at Connors as well. So
Of course.
I know that the guys have these in stock, and they also have slightly different variations that also do the same job at Connors. So
You got it. Great point, Chris. All right, so let's move along. And let's talk about what your computer needs. Now, for anybody who's not a nerd, this might be a little bit difficult to address. However, you know, it might be good too. So I'm just going to put myself up on the screen here as well. And bear with me just a moment. Let's see if I can move this out of the way. All right, so computer requirements. Let's talk about those. So almost everybody has a computer, and I'm sure everybody has, you know, probably bought something in the last 10 years. I can tell you with great deal of certainty that pretty much any computer in the last 10 years will work. Performance, as we know, changes based on, you know, newer features and functions, more RAM, stuff like that. But let's talk about that. Tonight I'm actually going to record on my work computer, which is a 2014 Dell. And it certainly doesn't have a lot to it, but you'll see that it should work out well. I better cross my fingers on that. All right, so let's talk about requirements. So as far as operating systems go, you really need Windows 10 now. Windows 7 is not supported by Microsoft anymore. So getting drivers for a lot of the new gear is pretty tough. So I'd recommend Windows 10, albeit I do know lots of people that still use Windows 7. Even Vista, we don't really talk about that anymore. And you know, Windows XP, I mean, if you're lucky, you can get away with systems that are that old and it still works, but pretty much Windows 10 is where you want to land. The same thing applies to Mac operating systems. Really 10.11 or 10.11 El Capitan is where you want to land. Anything, if you get down to 10.6, at least you've got Intel support, but 10.11 is where most of the newer drivers are written to now. I mean, now we're up to OS 11, you know, with new variations of that. So anything I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years would still be fine from Apple.
So Ray, this just allows the computer to be compatibility with the interface itself, correct?
Well, the interface is the big one. The compatibility with the interface is the big one. But the other big one is that the software that you get, so whether it be Cubase, Pro Tools, et cetera, we're going to talk about that too, that has to be compatible with your operating system. So the software that you want to use and the hardware you want to use has to be compatible. That's why we really need to have, at the minimum, these two operating systems. Of course, Windows 11 and the latest iteration of Apple will also work. So just moving on, I'm going to say you usually need 4 gigs of RAM. Now, anybody buying a computer today probably has more than that. And of course, the more RAM that you have, the quicker your computer will perform, because it can do more things in a snapshot of time because there's more horsepower. So usually 8 gigs of RAM is even better, 16 of course, or more. But 4 gigs is where you kind of need to start off. That'll get your hard drive rolling well. That'll get your recording and playback rolling well. 4 gigs of RAM is probably a good starting point. Next, I recommend a 500 gig hard drive and a 1 terabyte secondary drive. And you know, you might think, well, look, I got a 1 terabyte main drive, I'm probably good. Well, the problem with that is that you don't want to use the same drive that all your programs are running on, and to run your programs and to also do your recording with. Recording takes big blobs of information and stores it on the drive at times. So it's like playing a record and then dropping drops of water on it. You know, it's trying to do 2 things at one time. You're better off to have a secondary drive, and now you can buy 1 terabyte plug-in USB drives for $40-50. So I recommend getting a secondary drive to record the music onto and keep your primary drive to run your programs. There's another reason as well. The secondary drive will back things up. So if you want to back up to that drive and make sure you don't lose the music you've been working on, again, always a good reason to have a secondary drive. Next, you need at least a 15-inch monitor. I mean, I recommend as big as you can get, certainly at the best resolution you can get. Certainly it's nice to have something looking good, and also there's meters and active things going on in the software. You want them to be as accurate as you possibly can. And there's a few references to connectivity here, and this is where it gets kind of wonky, but USB, most people understand that. You know, there was USB 1, 2, and now 3, and probably newer iterations coming out since that. Firewire was an older Apple standard. It's now pretty much gone away, but there are still some Firewire interfaces on the market. Thunderbolt is pretty common now to both PC and Mac. Super, super fast, excellent for recording devices. So I really think that it's a good thing to look for. MADI is more of a professional studio application. It allows you to run 64 channels of audio back and forth, like big studios would use that. But you may go into Connors or other music stores and find MADI devices on the shelf. So probably handy that you know that exists. So USB is most common. Thunderbolt would be second most common, more for your higher end devices. And then Firewire and MADI would be next. And finally, check minimum requirements for software. So here's what happens. Sometimes you may go into the store, or maybe if you remember back when people bought more video games in the store, you go and buy a video game, you take it home and you plug it into your computer or put it in the drive, and it would say this computer doesn't meet the minimum specifications. Well, then you can't return it. You're stuck with the thing. It's better to go into the store when you're buying this stuff and say, hey, my computer's got 4 gigs of RAM, it's got a 500 gig hard drive in it, it's got 2 USB ports and a Thunderbolt port, and then that way the person who's selling it to you knows what your specs are on your computer, so they can make an informed decision or help you make one so that you're buying the right thing. So that's it really for computer requirements. I hope you're still with me because it's, I know, a technical thing and can be a pain in the butt.
Do you see any comments or questions there, Ray, popping up?
Not at the moment. I don't see any, so I think we're good to go. Probably move on to the next slide.
Oh, it looks like Rod just popped one up there. Will an amp work as a monitor?
Oh, I do see that. Okay, cool. Well, an amp works as a monitor. Yes, it will. So sorry, I was looking in the right-hand side here. Okay. So it can work as a monitor. It depends on how you hook it up. Now, the tricky thing about that is I could answer that question in a number of ways. You can plug your guitar into the amp and, of course, monitor directly off of that. And if there's a direct out on the amp, plug that into your interface. Or you can, of course, plug on the output of your interface through your amp and be able to hear what you're playing. And that could be your vocals and everything. So depending on how good your amp is will determine, how it sounds. I mean, amps are often tuned for guitars, right? So they're very mid-rangey, don't have as much high frequency, don't have as much low frequency. So to answer your question, yes, it'll work. It might not perform exactly how you want it, but yes, it will work.
Quick side note, Rod. Yeah, if you have a electric guitar amp, they generally don't have a tweeter or any sort of, like you said, Ray, a high frequency driver in any way. So vocals and things like that may not sound good coming back through an electric guitar amp, but an acoustic guitar amp, like the AM Mini, or one of our trainer amps, that does have a tweeter in it. So the highs are a little more pronounced. So that would help you get away with that a lot easier.
Yes.
If you had that.
That's true. Cool. Good eye, Chris. I didn't see that.
No problem. It
I'll
just
watch
popped
for it.
up. Keep the questions coming, everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's move on to the next slide here. Hopefully this picture-in-picture is working for everybody. So let's talk about audio interfaces now. And this is the part that usually makes people stumble. They go and buy one based on a recommendation and they get it home and they're stumped. And you know what? If you think back a few years, even printers did the same thing to us. If we went and plugged a printer into the computer and it didn't start up right away, it was like, oh man, this is such a pain in the butt. Lots of times you end up returning it, or who wants to go to the manufacturer's website and download the drivers and all that kind of stuff. Well, one of the cool things about this one we're going to use tonight is it doesn't require any drivers, so it's essentially plug and play. Plug it into a USB port and it's working, but let's talk about that. All right, so they usually come with 2, 4, or 8 inputs. Now, this is as simple as this is. If you're an acoustic guitarist, vocalist, and you want to record yourself, you only need 2 inputs. One for your guitar, one for your microphone. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't record 12 tracks of guitar and 12 tracks of vocals. You can do that, just 2 at a time. So not a problem. It just means 2 inputs gives you 2 sources at a single time. A 4 input, of course, who would use that? That might be 2 acoustic guitarists, 2 vocalists. Plug them in simultaneously, 2-person show, record that with multi-track. It's great. An 8-channel one would be, maybe a full band, right? 3 mics on the drums, 1 on the bass, vocalist, guitarist, etc. So I can record all those people simultaneously with an 8-channel one. And again, remember, that doesn't limit my number of tracks. I can have as many tracks as I want. I can just have 8 channels at a time. All right, Pro products can go up to 64 inputs. So you can't see this whole studio here, but this studio is based on a MADI setup. It has like 192 inputs in it. Who needs that, or why do I need it? Well, bands come in here all the time. And I do 9 mics just on the drums themselves. And then, you might put an extra mic on the underside of the snare. You might have 2 on the guitar amp and 1 direct on the guitar itself. A couple of overheads in the room. I mean, you get to a lot of inputs at times. And then, I use other sources in and out. So having the extra inputs is great. But if you're doing what I do, it's great. But do you need it? Probably not. So here's one of the 2 sticky points in this whole session that take a little bit of explaining, and I wouldn't be surprised if questions come up. So better units help to reduce latency. So latency is the amount of time it takes for, say for example, my voice to leave my head, go into the microphone, to the interface, to the computer, back to the interface, to my headphones. It sounds like a long time, but really if you can do it within 12 milliseconds, you're okay. Now, you might think all these interfaces must do that. Well, unfortunately they don't. So getting a newer interface these days will allow you to do that, but even the USB dual pre-PS has ways to prevent latency, and I'm going to talk about that right about now, I think.
Hey Wayne, I saw your comment there.
Oh.
Yes, thank you. But we don't need Wayne Phil Spector because we are Phil Spector.
There you go. And a Doors emblem, cool. Yeah, the wall of sound, that's right. Yeah, so in this case, basic units come with something called a blend option. I'm going to grab that device and show it to you. So, of course, inexpensive interfaces, the concept with them was, if I can keep the price down without adding all kinds of expensive chips, I want to do that. What they do is they have this mix knob, and I'm going to point it out to you here. You can probably see it on the top where my finger's pointing. So the mix knob, what it does is it blends between what's coming out of the computer and what's going into the mic pre's in the front. So if I only wanted to hear, let me see where I'm at here. If I only want to hear what's coming back from the computer, just that, I can dial it all the way over to that side and I'll just hear the computer. I can't hear what I'm putting in the front. If I dial it the other way, all the way, I can hear my own self speaking, but I can't hear what's playing back from the computer. Now, obviously neither of those 2 choices make a lot of sense, but blending between the 2 of those does make a lot of sense. So I'll put it in the middle for tonight's example, and hopefully it works out all right. Ideally, what goes in the front of this device has no latency because it hasn't hit the computer yet. What comes back from the computer has a certain degree of latency, usually 5 or 6, 8 milliseconds. So if I can eliminate the latency going in and then just live with the latency coming back, then I can cut my latency in half. And here's how that presents itself. If you have a lot of latency and I strum my guitar, the strum will come milliseconds later. No guitarist can play like that. Same with my vocal. If I start talking and I hear myself coming later, I can't sing like that. So getting rid of latency is a critical piece of this process. So that's why this knob exists on this particular one, because again, it's $109 or $99. So that compensation makes this device such a good value. So anyway, that's what that blend knob is all about, and it does exist in a lot of the lower priced units. All right, let's move on. Okay, so the system may come with a Daw software. Now, Daw simply stands for Digital Audio Workstation, and that's just a fancy name for the software that you need to record. So some examples of DAWs are Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic, Reaper. There's plenty of others as well. Yeah. Sorry, what did you say, Chris?
Cakewalk is the one that the Connors family's equipped with. I know that.
Yeah. So, and you know what? Which one is the best? Well, we could debate that all night, but I can tell you this. Really, the answer to that question is simple. The best DAW is the one that the kid down the street is using because they're your tech support. So it doesn't really matter. They're all going to sound amazing. They're all going to have great features. And yes, some of them you have to pay for. They have things like tuning, timing adjustments, more than 16 tracks, things like that as you buy into more expensive units. So that's the concept behind the audio interface. Which one's the best one to buy? Such a difficult question, but if you answer them based on the points that we have here, do I need how many inputs first of all? So figure that out. You know, do I need just the 2-channel? I want to keep it inexpensive. You know, look for the blend option, etc. So yeah, that's what you need, audio interface. There's no way, and doesn't matter what anybody says, Mac might be close, but there is no way to plug your Fender or Gibson acoustic into your computer with a whole bunch of adapters that's really going to work. And you may try it to prove me wrong, but you'll come back and get an interface, trust me. Cool. I don't see any questions popping up here. So
No, just remember that the DAW really is, just to reiterate that, the DAW is really, the control panel is really all it is. The sound and the quality of your recording come from the fact that you're using a decent, proper interface. Like you were saying,
Right.
that's what gets the real sound into the computer. The
Yeah,
DAW is just the controller.
That's right. Cool. Okay, so let's move along to microphones. Now, what's the best microphone to use? Well, here's my first answer to that. It's whatever mic you own currently, because there's no point in buying something new if you don't really know what the mic you already have does, right? So let's talk about that. So there's two major types, dynamic and condensers. There's also ribbon mics. There's other small iterations of microphones, podium mics, etc. But essentially for recording, we're going to talk just about dynamics and condensers. If you have questions on ribbons, I'm sure John will have a way to access that, and we can answer those at another time. So let's talk about these two. So dynamic microphones require more gain. So you may have seen pieces like the ART D7 or an SM7B or an RE20. They're really large microphones, and they need a lot of power to drive them. So you end up either having to get a separate preamplifier or turning your input volume right to the max to get these things to work. Well, that's still okay because they're really meant to record very loud sources like kick drums, you know, well, anything that's loud, saxophones, etc. You know, they don't pick up a lot of the ambient area. They stay pretty tight to the source. So if you're singing live on stage, you know, you don't get a lot of bleed from outside sources. So typically dynamic mics are used in live applications, but they're fantastic for the studio. SM57s are another commonly used mic in the studio. I use mine to mic up guitar cabs, underside of snares, tops of snares, various things. So yeah, if you got one of those mics from your live stuff, certainly you can use it in recording as well.
You might be comfortable with the Apex 381, which is a great,
385,
actually
yeah.
385 now. That's a great dynamic, more of a vocal designed microphone, and then the Apex 775 if you have that from previous as well.
That's right.
Two great instrument and vocal mics.
You got it. Good call. Now, condenser mics are more commonly found in studios, and the reason for that is they're a much more detailed microphone. So if, for example, I want to capture a bit of the room tone when I'm playing an acoustic, you're going to hear this mic tonight and hear just how it does pick up a lot of the ambient sounds, you know, the nuances off the guitar, sometimes the finger sliding along the strings, the things that really bring the life out of it. So it's a good combination to have both a dynamic and a condenser, at least one of each. Part of the difference is that condensers require 48-volt phantom power. It's a little switch that's on the back of your mixer, your audio interface. You just need to know that you need that turned on whenever you're using a condenser microphone. Now, as opposed to many years past, it doesn't matter if your phantom power is on and you plug a dynamic mic in, that's all fine too. But I would suggest plugging your microphone in, then turning on your phantom power, and you should be good to go. And finally, they're often used in recording applications. Very seldom, like Keith Urban will use a Beta 87 on stage, condenser microphone. That picks up a good bit of ambient noise, but it also keeps it very tight. It looks very much like a handheld microphone, and it is. So there's a good bit of overlap with each, but if you're only going to get one microphone and you have no mics right now, get yourself a condenser microphone for the studio. You'll find that it changes everything. The amount of information it picks up is really wonderful. So grab one of those for studio, and then of course get yourself a dynamic mic as well as to be able to record at other sources. Some crazy people like myself own over 30 mics, and they all have different applications, but you get to know those things over time, but really you just need two to start. Cool. Not seeing any questions pop up on mics.
Should I pull out the 435 quickly to show?
Well, you're going to actually use that soon.
All right, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
We'll get it ready.
Yeah,
Still
you
in the
got it.
box.
All right, let's talk about headphones. Now, again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, you could use your earbuds if you want to. They work. Really, you're just trying to transfer sound. But let me talk about a couple of different styles of over-the-head headphones, which are really more appropriate for the studio. So first of all, there's semi-open headphones. Now, the cool thing with them is you can be wearing those and you can still hear a little bit of stuff around you. They feel more like a studio monitor. They're not so, they don't cup your ears and cut off all the sound. So they're a little bit more multi-purpose. The only challenge with them is the sound leaks from them. So if you're standing in front of a microphone and your music's playing back, it's also going to come out of the headphones and go into your microphone. So not necessarily the best tracking headphone or a recording headphone, but they're often used as a replacement for monitors. If you don't have studio monitors, they're really great for mixing. Now, closed back headphones are really great for tracking. So if you got those on your head and you're singing into your microphone, it'll cut off all the sound of the music coming out of the headphones. Oh, great. I'm glad you're liking it, Jody. So they'll cut off all the extraneous sounds and you won't hear other things, nor will your microphone pick up other things. So closed back are really good for recording. But they also do this thing called low frequency traps, pressure traps. So it gives you the sense that if you cup your own ears, and nobody can see you doing it, but if you put your hands on your ears and you talk, you'll notice that most high frequencies go away when you talk, and you really hear a lot of low frequency. So that gives you a bit of a deceptive thought of what you're recording. So if you're standing in front of your guitar amp and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have closed back headphones on, and you start making guitar amp adjustments, you'll tend to add more brightness because there's so much low frequency in a closed back headphone. So that's why typically with a closed back headphone, you're using those for recording. Semi-open, you're using those for playback, so you can mix and so on. But again, do you need multiple sets of headphones? No. Use what you're comfortable with. It's personal preference, but at least now you know what the differences are. And oftentimes you can pick up a box and it'll say, this is a semi-open or a closed back. And you might say, I don't have studio monitors and I don't record anybody. I just mix. So then for that, you're just going to use a semi-open headphone. Or maybe all you do is track, and then you'll get a closed back headphone. But at least now you know the difference. The thing about earbuds is, in the over-the-head headphones, they have a 40 or 50 millimeter diaphragm. So they're like having a speaker right over your ear. And they're capable of delivering true spectrum frequencies from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs with essentially no effort. Where an earbud has like a 3.5 mil diaphragm in it, and that little driver has to try to reproduce all those frequencies. It's really, really tough. The advantage they have is they're right in your ear canal. So your ear canal does kind of some of that work, but they're not nearly as accurate as a rule. Same thing with those that get their earbuds fitted. They're really meant to serve the mid-range. So when you're playing your guitar, you can feel that as well. When you're singing, you feel that. So the highs and lows are kind of scooped out. So earbuds are cool and they have their place. And if they're all you have, you use them. But a semi-open or closed back over the head style headphone is what you really need. All right. Not seeing any questions on headphones, so I'm going to buzz right along. Chris, you got any questions on headphones?
No, I think I'm okay at the moment.
All right.
I think my first set of headphones that I had for recording were closed back, so that they were functional in both applications. But you do notice a difference when you're listening after a long time with closed back headphones. But they would serve the purpose for tracking as well. I didn't have any bleed into the microphone.
That's a good call. No, that's exactly right. All right, so let's talk about studio monitors. And these are the things that we said were optional. I know lots of people that use their home studio speakers, and they're happy with that. And if you are, you can be. As you get more into this and get to know basically the difference of a good studio monitor and not, you'll understand why people spend tens of thousands of dollars on them. Let's talk about them. So they're often referred to as near-field monitors. So if you go into some stores that might carry higher end ones and want to justify the value of them, they might refer to them as near field. And the reason is because you sit really close to them. So they create a sound that, I got to move this box away, sorry. They create a sound that, is only really 3-4 feet away from your head. So, they're not meant to be necessarily turned up super loud. You can get everything you need from them by sitting close to them. They usually come with power amps built in. Now, the old NS10s from Yamaha are an exception, for example. You can get a separate power amplifier for those and plug them into your system, and those are called passive speakers, but almost all studio monitors today have amps built into them. They offer a wider sound stage, so I'll try to draw a mental picture for you. Imagine a stage that you're sitting in front of, and all the instruments are acoustics. There's no PA, so it's acoustic drums, acoustic guitars, and people singing with no microphones. Imagine if there's a person over on the far left of the stage and they're playing an acoustic guitar. Well, where are you going to hear that? You're going to hear it on the left-hand side. It doesn't magically just fill up the room. You'll hear it more on your left side. And then if a person over on the right-hand side of the stage is playing a bass guitar, you'll hear that from the right-hand side of the stage. Now, if you're sitting right of the stage and they're both playing at the same time, you're going to hear the bass guitarist more than you're going to hear the acoustic guitarist. The whole concept of studio monitors is to place all those sounds in a stereo spectrum so that you get that sense of those instruments being directional. Now, there's another reason, and that is if you got two acoustic guitar players and they're both jamming on their guitars all the time and you just stack them on stage one behind another, you can't even tell really who's playing what. So sometimes it doesn't hurt to take those two guitarists and, move them around a bit on your stage so that you can hear them both distinctly. We're going to talk about that in a little bit of the mixing tips that we do tonight that are usually the mind-blowing thing that most people that are getting started didn't know, and so I really want to touch on that and give you that tip in a bit. But having studio monitors really helps you to create great mixes. So yes, used for detail mixing at low levels, so you don't have to crank them up, but you can hear all the different nuances, so you can EQ and compress and do the things that you need to do to make those sounds distinct. Now, some are ported and some are not. I don't have one here to show you, but if you can look way back there, I don't know if it's Chris is covering it, but there's an egg-shaped speaker behind you, Chris, and it's got a little hole in the front of it. So that's a front ported speaker. So don't move it or anything, but yeah, I can barely see it back there. I can almost point to it. There it is. So there's a small port right in the very front, and that port allows the bass inside the cabinet to escape. So if you're sitting in front of it, you'll get a little extra bass from the front. Now, if it's ported out the back, the bass actually tends to push backward and may reflect on a wall and come back to you. It's part of the speaker's design. It's not better or worse. So you can't say front ported is better than rear ported. It really doesn't make much difference. So it's just part of the speaker's design.
How about the general EQ or the flatness of the studio monitor, right?
Well, it's funny, John's asking a question here too. We now have the New Yorkville YSM 3BT studio monitors in stock. What are your thoughts on these? Okay.
Awesome.
I'm going to tie that answer into this. So people often reference studio monitors as being flat. And all that means is at every different frequency, from the lowest rumble to the highest tweet, that they actually have the same volume across the entire spectrum. So if I just sweep those frequencies, the speakers should deliver the exact same volume at all those frequencies. Now, when we bought new cars back in the 90s, 2000s, whatever, the first thing we did was took our favorite mixtape out, popped it into that car stereo, turned up the highs, turned up the lows, dropped out the middle because it sounded really happy face to us, right?
Really sounded like this. That's the mid.
That's the mid, that's right. But the idea is you really want it to be flat so that they're not extra highs, not extra lows. People will make those adjustments on their own when they listen to your music, but you want it to be as flat sounding as possible. So new studio monitors will deliver that. Now the new YSM 3BTs, what's brilliant about those is they're a really small footprint. They don't take up a lot of space on your desk. They use a 3-inch driver, but if you hear them, they actually measure very flat. A slight bump at 500 hertz, which is kind of where your vocal range is, which is typical of a smaller driver. But this is a great combination of a studio monitor that delivers great sound and actually has Bluetooth connectivity. So yes, there are times even in my studio I wouldn't mind watching a football game, so I turn on Bell TV and watch a football game. When I'm hearing that, I don't need flat response. I need some energy. So I'd like it to be able to turn up my highs and lows, and my studio monitors be able to deliver that. But if I want to watch a football game on my phone and hear it in full stereo fidelity, I can do that with the YSM 3BTs. Very, very cool speakers and not expensive.
And the fact that the power amp is only in the one,
yeah,
you only really need one plug. You only take up one receptacle.
That's right.
To power both monitors. So it's pretty handy that way.
Very handy, very easy to hook
and
up.
affordable.
All right. One last point on these is they may have 1/4 inch XLR RCA. Well, I want to debunk a few myths here. I'm going to show you what a 1/4 inch connection looks like. This is it right here. So you'll see this one has 2 stripes on it, one at the top and one at the bottom here. Let's get that nice and close. This is actually a balanced or stereo connection. Now, this is used for connecting, well, we're going to use it to connect the outputs of the audio interface straight into the computer tonight. I have to do that because we don't have studio monitors here and can't play it for you that way. But yes, you can use that for line level connections. If you have just a single stripe, you can use it to connect a guitar. It's called a patch cable that way. But yeah, this has multiple uses. 2 stripes stereo, 1 stripe mono, mono for guitars, stereo for practically everything else. This is an XLR connection. A lot of people call it a mic cable. Essentially, what it's all about is this is your industrial caliber connection, or your mic cable, I guess you could say. That's what a lot of people refer to it as. It can also connect, compressors to your gear. Well, again, microphones to your gear. It's good for long runs because it's balanced. But yes, serves many, many purposes. It's just a different way to connect instead of the 1/4 inch. Now there's also RCA, which is like your white and red connectors that you'd find on stereo systems from the past and stuff like that. You can find that on some of the systems today. There's not as much RCA stuff around, but at least those connectors still exist. So you may find that on the back of some studio monitors as well.
Definitely a home stereo type of setup would have RCAs.
Yeah, some of the less expensive interfaces will have that as well. Cool. So that's it on studio monitors. We're almost past the technical stuff and about to get on to the fun stuff here. So let's just talk about one last thing, headphones versus microphone, or monitors, sorry. So can you live without studio monitors? Absolutely. Can you mix for other people without studio monitors? Well, a lot of people are doing it today. They're just taking their computer and their headphones and they're able to do mixes. But I'm going to explain to you why having studio monitors is maybe not a bad idea. So yes, you're always going to use headphones for tracking. So if I'm singing in my microphone, I don't want it coming through my speakers and then going back into my microphone or creating a feedback loop. So I do need headphones whenever I want to track or record. Tracking just being another word for recording. Now, what I want to tell you is you want to always try to isolate your microphone. So of course with studio monitors you can't do that. If you turn them on and your microphone's on, you're going to hear what comes out of the monitors into your mic. But you want to isolate the microphone from, well, I'm in my basement, so my wife will be down here doing laundry at some point. I hear the dogs upstairs. You want to try to get that microphone into a place where you're not going to hear extraneous sounds. So, I mean, you can buy, these filters, the reflection filters that go behind your microphone. That's one way to stop sounds from bouncing around. You can build a vocal booth if you want to. All kinds of neat ideas that allow you to control that sound. Because if you recorded your mic and then you did 3 more layers of vocal and it picked up all this extraneous noise, by the time you got 4 layers of vocals, it's going to sound pretty messy. And you can say, well, I can dial that out for sure. Well, fact remains, I could take a magic marker and write on a white t-shirt and, eventually with some sort of bleach, I could probably get it out, but you never really get it out. So you want to try to get the best quality sound that you can going in. Always use monitors for mixing. So there, I've said it. I think that the big difference with monitors is I've got a wide stereo spectrum. So I can, if I want to move my overheads to the furthest outside point in my stereo sound, overheads on my drums, I can do that, and you're going to hear that tonight. In fact, when we record, you're going to hear the acoustic guitar as I pan it out and what difference it makes.
Ray, when I was doing my little recording project I was just working on with your help over Christmas,
Yep.
The biggest thing I noticed between headphones and monitors was to frequently go back and forth between the two, because you would notice things like, well, in your cans or your headphones, the bass would sound just right.
Yeah.
Then you take them off and listen to them in the speakers, in the room and it'd be, whoa, that's way too bassy.
Right.
Okay, all right, so you got to go back and give that a little tweak, and
Yeah.
so you get a more truer view of what you're listening to.
Yeah, and then there's also the car test, right? So, Rod, I'm going to get to your question here in a second. There's always a car test. People used to do a mix down and take it to the car, and listen to it there too, right? Because that's where most people listen to music way back when. So, or even now, for that.
Burn a CD or
Yeah.
throw it on your phone nowadays.
Yeah, you got it. So yeah, all those things. I mean, if you get a pair of studio monitors that you can become accustomed to and you can make good mixes on, they'll translate to anything. So question from Rod, how do you recommend isolating a mic when recording vocals and acoustic guitar? Oh, such a great question. So guys like Neil Young, they won't play, they won't do a separate guitar track and then a separate vocal. Part of the anatomy of their performance comes from playing the vocal, singing and playing at the same time. So a couple of tricks that I've used, you really can't isolate the lower microphone because it's wide open in front of your guitar, right? But there are different settings on microphones. Like for example, you could use a figure of 8 setting on a mic that allows you to record front and back. You could use, there's a setting that allows you to record all the way around the microphone. That picks up everything. And then there's settings that allow you to just pick up the front of the microphone. And then that way it cuts off, or it has side rejection and cuts off a lot of stuff. So make sure that you use mics in the cardioid pattern so that you don't pick up extraneous things. But the other answer to that, Rod, is I usually use an SE reflection filter. If you haven't seen one, they're like a half moon shaped item. I put the thing literally like a bowl underneath of the vocal microphone. And then when I sing with the vocal microphone, it generally reflects down all the stuff coming from the acoustic guitar. So if this is my mic, I'll have my reflection filter underneath the microphone, and then anything that comes from this mic facing this way, it doesn't go up to the mic up top. I use cardioid pattern for both mics, and I can get great performance. I can't stop leak totally, but I can get great performance.
You can have a little better of differentiate between the two.
Yeah. The other thing that I do that I find very interesting is I always use the pickup on the guitar as well. Now, I might not like that ultimately. I prefer to mic acoustic guitars, but it's a great blend tool that doesn't have any leak. So I can be plugging that into my interface. I'm not going to have to worry about vocals coming into that track, but it allows me to maybe bring the volume down on my acoustic guitar microphones, blend in a little of that clean pickup. And if you have a great pickup, it's great anyway.
I was just going to say that, John.
Yeah, the Aston Shadow as well. That's another one.
Yeah, Connor's Music has the Aston microphones category brand, and in that brand they have a reflection filter that's not only horizontal, but it's also vertically
Yes.
isolating too. So that might even isolate a microphone even better, or your vocals from all your surrounding sounds as well.
That's
or
right.
bouncing off of the wall too.
Yep, you got it. So always use monitors for mixing. You just have a wider sound field. I referred earlier to two key things that you're going to want to remember from the seminar. This is the second one. So this is you want to become a millionaire point. This is how you do it. So mixing is a combination of 3 skills: panning, volume, and EQ. Most people understand volume because they see all these faders on the bottom of a mixer and they figure, okay, well, if this is too loud, I'll just turn it down. And that's true. You can do that, and it allows it to, kind of escape temporarily from the mix, and it's not so dominant, right? Well, I want to again take you back to that picture of people being on a stage. So some people don't know what panning is, and you might not, and we're going to talk about it. But panning would be like this. If I didn't pan, it would be like a six-person band going on stage with the lead singer in the front, the bassist right behind them, the lead guitarist right behind them, the rhythm guitarist behind them, the drums right behind them, and then whatever other instrument. And when they all play, you don't really know what you're listening to because you can't see them all, you can't hear them all. It's whatever is the loudest is the most dominant. But that's why bands don't set up like that on stage, especially small stages. What they do is they spread out, right? If not just to be able to see people, but so that you can distribute the sound as well. And that's all the panning is. It's moving people on a stage to places where they can be easily discerned. So after this session, people who've been recording, they often go home and say, okay, well, I wonder what's going to happen now if I take my lead guitar and put it over here, and my electric and put it over here, acoustic put it over here. Holy mackerel, all of a sudden my voice just cleared up. And that's the EQ piece.
That was one of the biggest things that I noticed from your seminars, Ray,
Yeah.
and that I've used mixing. If you have your voice there and you have two guitars going, instead of doing anything to the voice, or instead of raising the volume or changing the EQ of your voice, just move the other things away from it. And the pronunciation is huge with the vocals.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, a lot of times you don't even really have to do anything with volume. In fact, a lot of my mixes, if you take a look at them on screen, all the levels are pretty flat. You'll see some automation from time to time, but if you place items or sounds properly in a mix, partially through panning, you won't have to change volumes at all because they'll all have their own home. Now, when they don't have their own home and sounds are close together and they fight with each other, that's where EQ comes in. And if you can master EQing, you can move to LA, become a mix engineer, and live happily ever after. That's the one you really want to learn. Can you hit that space bar, Chris?
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. No worries. Yeah, so panning, volume, and EQ, those are the secrets to mixing. So you heard it here first. So another trick is when you're listening to music, try not to listen too long, whether it be headphones or monitors. And the reason for that is your ears get tired. They're just made up of tiny bones and membranes, and they basically do this to create sounds, right? These little drum beats on the with a mallet inside your ear to create these tones, and they get tired, especially from a lot of high frequency. Now, I bought studio monitors that were more expensive that purposely, when you turn them up, they're a lot easier on the ears. They're not flooded with a lot of thick mids by themselves. So they make listening to music for long periods of time a lot more enjoyable. So again, that's part of what makes studio monitors more expensive. So it doesn't mean that less expensive ones aren't great, but again, that's what you're paying the difference for. Don't listen too long, you'll get ear fatigue and you'll make a whole bunch of mistakes. And generally what that is you've listened for 4 hours, you start to turn up high frequencies because your ears are tired. So cool trick.
Totally.
And last, as Chris pointed out, go back and forth between headphones and monitors and your car stereo because if you really want to understand what a good mix sounds like, it's got to translate really well to all of those mediums. And what's the number one way that people listen to music? Well, it's earbuds, right? So you'll listen on your phone, and to be able to do that, again, it's got to sound great in the earbuds. So those are my recommendations on the difference with headphones versus monitors and why it's probably good to have both. So we're just short of an hour into this, and we're through all of the technical stuff. So if anybody has a question on technical, now's a good time to ask it. And I'll take a quick sip of my tea while I watch for any questions to come up.
When I finished doing some recording recently, that's what I did, Ray. I listened to it on my phone with my Bluetooth earbuds. While I was out for a walk, I listened plugged into the car. Yeah. I listened to it on the laptop with no speakers, just the laptop speakers.
Yeah.
And they don't all have to sound the same, but if you can get them all sounding okay, then you're probably in the right area.
Yeah, and a lot of people spend time on buying a headphone or studio monitor that, somebody else might not be able to mix on them. What happens is the more you use a tool, the more you get used to it. For those of us that like gardening, I mean, if you have one of those 3-clawed shovels, you can do pretty much anything. But you know what? They don't do a real good job at digging a hole, so having a shovel doesn't hurt. So get the right tool. It'll do a better job. You'll enjoy the process that much more. So the question of when you covered dynamic versus condenser microphones, did you explain what phantom power is? So I will explain that. So phantom power often presents itself as a term of 48V or 48 volts. Essentially, all condenser microphones require this 48 volt juice to make that product work. So although I did explain it, ideally you just really need to remember that if it's a condenser microphone, I need 48 volt phantom power to be turned on. Sometimes there are dynamic mics like the Aston Stealth that is a dynamic, but it has an amplifier built into it that is turned on with 48 volts. So 48 volts is used for mostly condenser use, but it's essentially there also to turn on powered circuits for things like that Aston microphone. So to get into any more technical than that, it's probably no fun. So we'll go on from there. All right. So we're at the point now where you've been to Connors, you got your interface, you're welcome. You got your interface, you got your microphone, and you got your headphones. And now you're ready to go. Now, if you're like a lot of people, that bag's still sitting in your closet right now. So actually, before we move on, I see Tony's got a question. I have a technical question about noise floor and strategies to get cleaner recordings free of hiss. Well, Tony, you probably just fixed the problem of most home engineers if you can get that sorted out. So I want to explain that if that is your question. Here's how to get rid of hiss. And let me tell you where hiss comes from. So hiss comes from gain. And gain, if you look at a mixer, it's the top knob on any mixer channel. And essentially what gain does, there was a time, even going back to the 80s, where almost everything was recorded on tape. And tape had a certain noise floor. Just inherently, it had a degree of hiss. So you had to gain your volume up just to get over that noise floor. Now today, that really doesn't exist. The dynamic range on these things is like 112, 115 dB. So that means from the very quietest noise right up to the sound of thunder is how far these things can record, like that spectrum of information. So now if you're recording on tape, you still need to gain past the noise floor, meaning if this is dead quiet and this is the loudest source, well, tape already has a bit of noise that takes you up to there. So I got to be even louder than that. So I got to turn up my gain knob to get past that. Whenever I add gain, I also add noise, unless I have really high-end preamps. So an example would be in a $100 interface or $200 interface, they're not the quietest preamps. So you can usually turn them up to 7 or 8, but once you get past that, you start to introduce hiss. So you don't want to do that. So when you're doing a recording, you want to keep your gain loud enough without getting distorted or creating hiss. So in the digital world, you really don't need a lot of gain. You just need to be able to get enough tone into the system so that you can record it. The beauty about computer recording is you can then take that sound and amplify it all you want, and it's very unlikely that it's going to get noisy. So that was more of a question even a decade or two ago, Tony, but it's less of a concern now because the recording mediums really don't produce a ton of noise. Just low-end preamps produce a ton of noise. Now, conversely, you can buy a $2,000 preamp that you can crank that thing right up to 10 and it'll give you nothing but volume, no noise whatsoever. So again, that's part of the whole premium purchasing thing. You can buy audio interfaces that are $5,000 that have top-end preamps in them. Again, not for everybody, but that's part of the reason they're more expensive, is that they deliver zero noise on the preamp. So hope that answered your question.
You answered mine. That makes total sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody who's ever played live, the way that they recognize gain is that it starts to squeal through their speakers.
Yeah.
So you know you got too much gain when you're getting feedback.
These days, you don't need to. You're not with digital. You're not.
Yeah.
There's no advantage to overdriving the circuit a little bit.
That's right.
Unless you have a tube preamp or something that is going to react positively for that.
Of course.
So if you do see the light, well, we'll get into that. But if you see the light getting into the red, then it's in digital. It starts to crackle.
That's right. Yeah. We are going to talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to paint that picture again. You know, you got your bag full of your goodies, and you take them home, and I'll tell you, a lot of the times the bag it sits in the closet, and no one ever does anything with it. But if you come to the seminars, and when you used to go to stores, and you watch how we do all this, then people are like, okay, I think I can do that. I can plug this into my computer and so on. Well, we're actually going to do all of that right here, right now, with a separate camera to point it all out. So, Chris, you're welcome, Tony. So Chris is actually going to be my assistant with this. I'm going to talk about the stuff. I'm going to hand it to him, and he's going to actually plug it all in. So you ready to go? Hope so. So let's talk about it. Where do I start? Well, just like if you brought a printer home, you'd start by plugging the thing in, right? So let's talk about that. If it came with drivers and came with computer software, you would load all that stuff first. Now, I've already done that because it sometimes takes 15 to 20 minutes to load, Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic, all that stuff, and then drivers for the hardware. Well, this product we have tonight has no drivers, so you plug the thing in, it's going to work. But yeah, the first thing you do is load the software and load the drivers for your interface. The next thing you do is you'd be doing is checking the internet for the latest drivers. So again, if I was plugging in something other than a USB dual pre-PS that needed drivers, the disc that comes with most of these things, if they even come with discs anymore, are almost always outdated. You know, they make the thing in January, it gets boxed and sent overseas and arrives here by June. And then by the time it hits the store shelf and takes 5 to 6 months to sell, it's a complete year since they wrote the drivers for that thing. So you got to go online and get the latest drivers. And drivers are only required because, you know, people like me who test things and put it on higher end gear and stuff and find glitches, we report them to the companies and say, you know what, when you do this and you do this, it doesn't work. So they're not giving you drivers so they can spy on you. They're giving them to you so that it'll work under virtually every application. They've tested things that went wrong, and then they make a patch change so that it works well on any system. So check the internet for the latest drivers. All right, so now the rubber's going to hit the road. We are going to plug into the computer. So let's do that. I'm going to switch cameras here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of my picture-in-picture and just go down to get rid of that and just go here, back to myself. Actually, I'm going to go right to here. So I've got a little setup here. Chris is going to hand me the interface. So you can see I've got it in my hand. This is my work laptop that I referred to, 2014 Dell Inspiron, so nothing fancy. But here I've got my USB connection, and on the back of this device is the USB port. Now they call this USB-B, which is the square termination. I'm going to plug that straight into there. Now I've got a USB hub here because this computer is so old it only has one USB port. So I had to get a hub so I can plug in a couple of things. So I'm going to plug that straight in the front, and you may or may not hear a ba-dump. Okay, I can hear it here. Maybe you did, not sure. So now my interface is actually plugged in. So it really is that simple. Now, I'm going to take you to the next point. Plug your microphone into the interface. Tough stuff. Let's go there and do that. So I'm going to grab, I think, Chris, you have an XLR cable. So
I do, yeah.
I can see that you're taking that microphone out of the package there. We've never opened this up, so there's also a shock mount you're going to have to plug in, etc.
No prob, no prob.
All right, give you your 6 feet of distance there. And
Give you that
yeah,
there,
thank
Ray,
you
if
very
you want.
much. So I'm going to take this cable here and I'm going to plug it into the front of the interface. So bear with me here. And again, trust me when I say that a lot of the phone calls I get privately for help, people haven't even gotten to this step. And that's okay. That's what happens with new technology, right? So let's go and do that. So I'm going to plug that into port number 1. There's 2 ports on the front of this thing. And Chris, do you know why you plug the microphone into port number 1?
Probably because microphone's most important.
All right. Is it a problem to plug in input number 2?
No, you can do either or, I think.
That's right. They're the exact same thing, right? So I'm just going to plug that right into the front here and turn these volumes down. And then I'm going to hand this cable right back to you.
Okay, we're set here.
All right. Still working on it. Okay. So Chris is taking that mic and putting it on a shock mount. And the shock mount's basically taking away vibration from the floor that goes up into the microphone. So,
It's got elastics on it if you've
Yeah.
never seen one of these.
yeah, I see it.
Keeps it
moving
sort
there.
of floating.
Yeah, perfect. All right, now he's going to plug that mic cable into the base of that. Now, going back to our computer here, on the back of this device, there is a thing called phantom power. That button is right here. It's a little silver thing. Now, this is a condenser microphone, so I have to press that in. So it was already in, actually, so I'm going to press it in. And Chris, if you want to just speak into that microphone.
Sure. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, check. Hey, I'll go a little closer. There we go.
Okay.
Try to be about 6 inches or so from it, generally speaking,
Okay.
for what I'm doing. Hey, 1, 2, 3, good. 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
welcome to
Now you can
Connors.
see little green and red lights going on here.
Yes, welcome to Recording 101 right here at Ray's studio,
Okay.
Connors Music. Hey,
So maybe give us a little burst, like sing happy birthday.
happy birthday to you.
All right. Cool. So you can see that red light came on. We're going to talk about that more in just a moment. But essentially, I wanted you to see that you plug the microphone into the interface. So we're halfway there. All right. Now the next step here.
I might throw the sock on just so we don't
Yeah,
get
sure.
any puffy noises.
All right. I'll just show you what he's doing there. Just putting on a pop filter. Just in time for me to put the camera on.
Tighten
right?
that up a little bit.
Yeah. So this little thing he's putting on the top here takes away the plosives, the P's, the T's, etc.
Yeah.
But the next thing, of course, is to make sure the phantom power is on because we need that for the condenser microphone to work. There's my dog barking. All right. And the last step here is to plug the headphones in. Now I can see that I didn't say plug the guitar in, but we're going to do both of those things right now. So let's go back to that image. Chris,
Okay.
I believe you have a guitar cable.
I do.
All right.
And the guitar.
So go ahead and plug into your guitar, and then I think I've got the other end
Unplugged?
here.
Cool.
No, you go ahead. All right, and I'll go back to our image here. So I'm going to plug that straight into the front of here. And Chris, I'm going to turn this up, so go ahead and
It's the winter time. The wood doesn't like all the change in the temperature.
Yes, they are. Now maybe somebody can tell me if they're hearing this at home. Just want to make sure that you are.
Yeah, that'd be great. Drop a quick comment. Make sure you're hearing something.
Yeah, that would be great. Looks like
one,
by the image that I am seeing it on my mixer here, but that's the crazy thing about doing this online is you never really know. So, okay, and you can see we're clipping. So let's talk about that now. So the idea here well, actually, I think we're going to get into that in the next slide. So let me just set this back down, and we're going to add a few more things. All right. So how do I use my interface? And again, this is the part that holds a lot of people up. They get this far even, they can connect it up, but they don't know where to take it from here. So how do I use the interface? Well, this is how you do it. So you want to set the input level to light the green indicator. So essentially you saw that happening, but I'm still going to go to the unit and show you what that looks like. In fact, I'm going to just reverse these two screens here so that you can see both. So let's go to here and let's picture this. Oops, wrong one. There we go. And I'm going to go back to this screen. There we are. So you want to set it to light the green indicator. So go ahead and play, Chris. Okay, you saw that red light going off when he strummed it. So I might dial that down a wee bit.
We don't want any red, correct?
No, you really don't want any red. All right. Because again, there's no need with digital interfaces to have the...
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, that's great, Dave. Thanks. Now your microphone, Chris.
Sure. 1, 2, 3. Hey, hey, hey,
Now,
hey,
Chris,
hey,
what I'm
hey,
going to
hey,
do
hey.
is I'm going to turn off your lav here because
Sure, yeah.
I'm sure that's coming through. So I'm killing that. And so go ahead and sing now.
Checking 1, 2, gonna say hello to you.
All right, cool. Now they can hear that through that mic, but what I'm going to do is I've cheated ahead of time here, and I've grabbed a couple of cables that are going to act as the connections to my studio monitors. So what I need to do here is I'm going to plug the left one into the left output on the back. So there's my left plug. I'm going to plug that here, and I'm going to plug the right plug to here. And now you should be able to hear this in full stereo online. So Chris, if you'll go ahead and play the guitar, we'll probably hear that out of the right speaker.
Sure.
So go ahead. If somebody can confirm that we're hearing that out of the right speaker, that'd be cool. All right, now if you'll just sing for us as well.
Hey, 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 hey. 1, 2, 3, 4, and singing the song.
All right, vocal
today.
and
You can
guitar.
see the signal on both, eh?
Yeah, you can. Now I'm going to confirm that on the connection over here, and make sure that that's happening. So
Dave,
Chris, if
you're
you'll,
still listening, tell us if you can hear left and right.
can you just play just the guitar, okay, and try just your vocal now.
Me, 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 me.
Perfect. All right, so I can see the vocal going into the left and the guitar going to the right. So we're this far. So now we've actually got the thing connected. Let's see here. I'm going to go to the next slide and say the best level is when the red light just comes on. If you're hitting it hard enough that it pops pops on once or twice, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, right on.
So let's go back to the screen here.
You
And
just
actually,
don't want it steady on like that.
that's correct. So balance your mix to match the input with the output. Well, only you're going to know that, folks, when we play this back, but I'm going to throw headphones on in a minute so I can hear that too. So what you want to do is when you're listening back, you want it to be just as loud as what you're putting into it, because that's how you'll perform better. If it's too loud in your head on playback, you're going to scream to sing over top of it. Set the output level to comfortable listening level, set the headphones to comfortable listening level, and of course make sure you hear yourself well, because if you do, again, everything is about performance here. So if you feel good when you're hearing it, you'll perform way better. Let's move on to the next slide and a couple more tips here. So how do I use my DAW? So here's where we're gonna have some fun. So again, we haven't really prepared anything. This is going to be as raw as it gets. So I'm going to take you over now to my computer screen. In fact, I'm going to get rid of the picture-in-picture and go this way. So there's my work laptop that you should be able to see me doing my controls on up in the upper right-hand corner. All right, so I've got Cubase in the system, which again, I didn't want to have to load it all. So I'm going to hit Cubase and you're going to see it launch. There it is. All right, and you don't have to know Cubase for this to work, but I'm going to create a session here. So I'm going to say create empty, and I'm going to save this project right off the hop. File, save as. I'm going to call this Connors Music. So we'll save that. And that's saving to a Cubase session on the laptop. Yes, I should have an external drive, etc., but I'm not going to do that for this point here. So I'm now going to right-click in here, or whatever your software does, it'll be the same thing. I'm going to add a couple of audio tracks. So they're both going to be mono. I'm going to use a stereo output, and I'm going to change it to 2 inputs and say add tracks. Now the first one, I'm going to rename it as vocal. Second one, I'm going to rename it as guitar. I'm going to record arm both of them, which means they're both going to be recorded on. Now the vocal is recorded on input 1, or left channel. The guitar is recorded on input 2, or the right channel. So we have 2 different inputs. You'll see left and you'll see right. Right along the side here, right stereo in, left stereo in. Now, if I wanted to create my own inputs, I could do that too. I could go to Audio Connections and add a couple of buses like that, and just say mono in is my left, call it left if I want to, and mono in 2 would be my right. So if I don't want to use, if I just want to make it so I remember these things, if I got an 8-channel interface, that might make a difference, but then I would just go here and select left, and here I go and select right. Essentially, bottom line is I have my guitar, my vocal mic plugged into the left one, my guitar plugged into the right one. That's all I have to remember. So just to test them, Chris, I'm going to press it. Oh, I'm not going to press that because I guess it's going to feed back in here, so we won't do that. If I wanted to monitor it, I could press this little button here and I could monitor what I'm playing. But the way our setup is tonight, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hit these 2 channels. Although, one thing I could do is go to Studio and Mix Console, and we'll be able to see Chris playing. So I'm just going to, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to get rid of the stereo input so we don't see it. So Chris, will you play just your guitar? Just 1 second. So we're getting some noise here that I'm not crazy about. And this is the beauty of working blindly like this, because you just never know what you're going to come up against. But I can see my left input, my right input. I wonder what you're hearing on your end. In fact, I can take this headphone and I can listen right now. So I hear my, oh, I see why, because my microphone, my lavalier microphone also affects it. So play the guitar one more time, Chris. Okay, so what I need to do is go to these audio connections again, just to make sure. Ah, that's why. So the right needs to be input number 2. That's why the same thing was coming through both. So left of 1, right 2. There we go. So even the so-called pros make mistakes.
Why do they have to be left and right? Why can't it just be 1 and 2?
Well, you know what? Different interfaces have different things.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of funny how that works. They show up as different things.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we're probably ready to go. I'm going to get out of the mix console here, and I'm going to put that down at the bottom here because I don't need it right now. And let's start recording. So what Chris is going to do is he's going to sing and play, and we're going to track both things at the same time, and then we're going to do some other neat stuff after that. So let's put our, let's pray that this all works out. So in fact, what I should be doing here is, what view do I want to give? I'll give us this view so you can see us kind of at work here. So
I'll just give you a quick little heads up. This is an original song, and I wrote it. And I decided to play it tonight because it's totally got a Connors Brothers vibe to it.
awesome.
So I kept that in mind when I wrote it, and I kept that in mind for tonight for jamming too.
All right, cool. So we should be ready. I'm going to hit the record button here, and let's see what happens. So go ahead. All right, so I wanted you to see what was happening on the interface. What I want to do now, though, is those 2 tracks seem eerily similar to me, so I am thinking that I still made some sort of an error here because I may have blended the two, or either that or your microphone is just picking up exactly what your guitar is picking up, right? So that can happen too. But why don't we take a listen and see what we get? So I'm going to just play this back.
Headphones on here.
Yeah, well, you'll definitely need to do that. That's right. So we haven't even plugged those headphones into the back of this device yet. Let's do that. People have gone eerily silent. I hope that's because you're taking a lot of cool stuff in.
Hopefully people are listening.
Yeah. All right.
We'll go directly in there, I think.
That's right. So you'll be able to hear this played back as well. And maybe you can just tell me if it's too loud or anything. I can turn that down for you. Okay.
Like laptop speakers. Oh,
Yeah.
You've got to set the...
Let's try this. Oh, you know what's happened, Chris? This is great. I'm glad that we that these things happen.
Because this
So-
is real life.
Yeah, this is real life. Yeah, these are the things you're going to run into. So in my worrying about whether we're working online properly or not, I never picked the interface, and I never told you to pick the interface. So I'm going to fix that right now. What I'm going to do is get out of this and show you. We want to go back to these slides here momentarily. So how do I use my software in Daw? Set up your inputs and outputs. So what I did was I created 2 inputs, right? One for guitar and one for vocal. Set the tracks you'll be using. So I created 2 tracks, one guitar and one for vocal. Mono tracks are things like microphones, guitars, bass, etc. But maybe some stereo things. Chris, can you think of things that might be stereo?
Keyboards or an electronic drum kit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Synths, drum machines, etc. And then record dry whenever you can, because you can always add tones later in the computer, like reverbs and things like that. You can always add those things in later. So if you record dry, if you record with reverb on, say on vocal pedal or something you recorded that on, you can't take it off later. You have to redo it. And then my cool tip is, when in doubt, use YouTube. So that's it for the written portion. I'm going to get off of that because I want to get back to the practical stuff here. One of the things I didn't do, which was pretty crazy that I didn't do that, I should have, forgot. Didn't set my inputs and outputs. So I didn't even pick the right interface. So I'm going to do that right now. On the computer in Cubase, I should have gone to Studio and gone to Studio Setup and changed the interface that I'm using, because right now it's just using the computer speakers. So I want to go to ART ASIO, which is what this ART device is. And you can see this round trip latency here, 3.5 milliseconds and 6.5 gives me actually 10 milliseconds of round trip latency. And that's fine. Anything less than 12 milliseconds is relatively inaudible. When you get past that, you end up with like a chorusing type sound. When you get up to 20, 25, it can become almost unusable because you'll strum and the strum will come later. So now I'm actually using the interface that we need. So that's too funny. So, and what's beautiful is when you're presenting this in front of people, you make these mistakes all the time, which is awesome. That's the way it should be, because you're going to make these mistakes too. So let's try this one more time. This time, let me just double check and make sure that my connections are correct. So USB audio codec, you can see those are the plugins for the ART piece, the ART USB dual pre-PS. So codec in 1 is left and codec in 2 is right. I should have caught that when we were doing this, but I didn't. So now I can know that this, go ahead and say something, Chris.
Dave says live and authentic. You got that right.
There you go, that's right.
Real deal, man.
Yep, so you can see Chris's meters here when he talks are going up, right?
Is that because you have the monitor button?
It is. Now, same thing with guitar. If you pluck a string on the guitar, you'll see that that goes up.
Let's grab the guitar here one more time.
Go ahead. Did you turn the guitar down?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It's all right. There it is. That's very low latency.
It is.
Because out of my left ear, I'm hearing the input. And then out of my right ear, or vice versa for this thing.
Yeah, right ear for the guitar.
Sorry, other way around.
Yeah, you got it.
Then I hear what's coming out of the computer coming back at me. It's
That's
very
right.
minimal.
Yeah. Cool. Now let's try this recording one more time. I bet you it's going to sound a little better. All right. So shall we? I will tell you when we're going.
Okay.
And we're rolling.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All of a sudden, things were different. And all of a sudden, we were gone. The doors closed behind and the shutters locked up tight. We all ran for cover from the storm.
All right. That's great. And stop that. What are the 1/4-inch jacks in the back of the interface plugged into? Well, you're not allowed to ask that question, Rod. No, I'll tell you the truth. To be able to put this broadcast on for you, I'm using a multi-channel switcher. And that switcher has inputs on it, so I can give you 4 cameras and 2 lavs and so on. So normally those are plugged into studio monitors.
Just direct into one left, one right.
That's right. But of course, a live broadcast is now the studio monitors. So everybody's got a set of studio monitors in their home right now for us to listen on. So great question, very intuitive. And that's what we're doing. Now I'm curious, anybody who wants to tell us, hopefully you're hearing this in stereo. You should have heard the vocal mic in the left channel and the guitar in the right channel. I'd love to hear that that's been confirmed. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to back up to the beginning of this. I'm just going to play it back for you. Should sound a whole lot better than what we did a few minutes ago. So here we go. Chris, you should be able to hear this too. Right now it should be in full stereo.
All of a sudden, things were different. All
All right, so you would have just seen me right now just turn the guitar down a little bit, but I'm going to get even more cheeky because this is, we talked about gain before, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some gain to Chris's vocal so that we can, it can stand out a bit in the presence. So just going to, oops, I didn't want to do that, but I'm going to scroll this up a bit. There's gain. And I'm going to give him 3 dB so that it pumps along with it, and I'm going to restart that so we can hear it back again. And his voice should be a lot more balanced now.
And all of a sudden things were different.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden
All right, so now I want to, and again, I really hope that you love these tips that we're going to show here. Now I want to show you a very common practice used by, you know, acoustic guitar vocalists to create that kind of, you know, live stage feel. So what we're going to do, Chris, I'm going to get you to play essentially the same thing on guitar again, and I'm going to show people what that's going to do for us momentarily. So I'm going to just make another audio track, and I'm going to call this one Guitar 2. Now, we got to remember the guitar's plugged into the input number 2, so we have to select right in this case. So if you want to just play the guitar, Chris, yeah, you can see the meters going up. All right, perfect. So what I want to do now is I want you to play along with this and play the exact same thing or thereabouts, if you don't mind. Okay. Alrighty, ready to roll? So I'm going to hit the record button, and we should. Be
careful not to record the microphone because
that
would add another track.
That's right. And I got stuff come up on my screen here. I'm going to get rid of that so that I don't see it, and don't know why it's there. So yeah, I hope that's, or maybe that's not even my computer that's showing up on. I don't know. But anyway, I hope nobody's seeing ads here or anything.
Maybe it's on your I think it's on your laptop.
Oh, you may be right. It's on my laptop. There you go. So don't know why that comes up. But anyway, let's do this now.
All right.
And I'm hitting record. Of course, I've only got one track armed. I don't want to record over the other tracks. So let's do it.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so now we have these two tracks. So remember we talked about panning, volume, and EQ when we were going through the session. I'm going to just check a couple things here. All right. Okay. All right. So it looks like we may be in stereo now. I'm not sure. So I'm hoping that we are, because this is going to be the real test. So what I wanted to create here was an ambient sound in the sense that it's almost as though there's a singer in the middle of the stage and then there's two guitarists, one on either side of the singer. It's going to serve two purposes. One, it will isolate those three instruments by themselves, but two, the acoustic guitar actually has a lot of the similar frequency properties to a voice. Now in Chris's voice, where it's more in the mid-high range, it's very close to the acoustic. So it blends nicely, but you're going to hear his voice open up completely without me even having to add more volume. You're going to hear his voice get clearer because I'm going to move the guitars out of the way. So let's just do that, hoping that you can hear things in stereo. So on the left-hand side of the first guitar track, you see a little C. I'm going to take that and drag that person all the way to the left side of the stage. Then I'm going to go to this guitar, and drag it all the way to the right-hand side of the stage. And just for a moment, I'm going to turn off the your other microphone here, Chris, so we don't get any bleed. And I'm going to play it back for you now. And you should be able to hear a distinct difference in the guitar play. I'm going to move the panning left and right for you to hear it, and hopefully you can. Maybe I'll start it from the beginning.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah. Things were different, and all of a sudden we were gone. The doors closed behind and the shutters locked up tight. We all ran for cover from the storm. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is usually the part where people are like, okay, I got to go because I got to go home and fix every mix I ever had. So it's funny how that works out, but I'm going to turn your lab back on here, Chris.
Sure, yeah.
There we go.
It's crazy how the vocal just pronounces itself so much better, and all we did was move things.
That's right. We haven't even talked about EQ and stuff yet, which we probably won't get into that too much tonight. Can't give away the $1 million secrets in the first night, but I want to take it now one more step if I can. I want to put some backup singers in here, and since there's only me and you, and you're the singer here, you're going to create those extra voices. So I'm going to turn off the guitar for a second here. I'm going to turn that mic up and turn your lav back off. Okay. And Chris, what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to play back the track, and folks, I'm going to just bring those two guitars were actually at different levels. I can see how this guitar was quite a bit louder, so I'm going to bring that down, leave your vocal here, and we're going to now create another track, and we're going to call that harmony. So I'm going to add another audio track. So you can see here, just because we have two inputs doesn't mean I'm limited to how many tracks I make. I can make as many tracks as the software will allow, even though I've only got two sources. So, you know, if I'm done with that, I can just unplug my guitar and my microphone, and I can plug in my, you know, a hand conga if I want to, or whatever other instruments I want to plug in, my bass guitar and so on. So again, I'm just limited with the two-channel interface to two things at a time, not to two tracks at a time. So, all right, so we should have told you before you were coming here that you're going to have to do all this work, because now you're on the hook. All right.
I think I got the note I
Harmony, all right.
think I want to say.
Okay. Now, one of the questions, it's overdub time, you got that. So one of the questions that was asked earlier about the noise floor and so on, you can hear my chair moving around, you can hear Chris shuffling because the microphone's live to the room. Even though this room has a certain degree of control in it, it's not soundproof. This is meant to be more of a live feel in this room. The control room that's just on the other side of my wall here is fully controlled with a vocal booth in it. So for voiceover talent and stuff, I've made that investment. You may too, depending on how far you get into this. But if we did this in that room, we would eliminate a lot of this noise too. But as you heard, it sounds pretty darn good. And if you look at these waves here, what you see right there, that's the noise. So, you know, one of the cool things I can do if I really wanted to edit this song, let's just listen to this before we do the harmony.
1, 2, 3.
So we're picking up a little bit of the guitar, but if I really wanted to get down to editing here, watch this now. So you can see his voice started there, right? So this is why I love computer editing. So look at this. I'm just going to get rid of that. And if I want to really get surgical, I can get right down to where your voice started. So now, when I play this track back, all of that has none of that noise in it because it's all taken away. So when I take this off,
And all of a sudden,
so I just did an edit for you that we would charge $80 an hour to do. So, you know, what's cool, again, with computer editing versus, say, tape or something, there's no scrubbing required, there's no demagnetization, any of that stuff. This is as quickly as it takes to edit. If I want to do a fade, you know, I can take the beginning of this and all I got to do is grab the front of this track and I can fade it in. You see that? So much cool stuff you can do with computer editing. It's just, it's unbelievable now. So now, Chris, if you're ready to perform, what's the name of your backup singer, by the way?
This would be Sneaky C.
All right, sounds good. Okay, now the Connors brothers have something to talk about every time you go there, Mr. Sneaky C.
Sneaky C.
That's too funny. All right, so you ready to roll?
Yep.
Here we go. So I'm arming just this harmony track. Oh, and I gotta tell it. Yep. Well, the vocal is on the left, so we're good there. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, let's do this.
And all of a sudden things were different. And all of a sudden we were gone. The doors closed behind and the shutters locked up tight. We all ran for cover from the storm.
Beautiful.
Cool.
All right, so for example, just to show you a quick edit, I don't think Chris meant to add something here.
The doors closed behind.
So watch this. I'm going to just take that out of there just by going to my cutting tool.
I didn't even want to sing that.
Yeah. So I just grabbed it and deleted it.
Oh,
And boom, it's gone. So
not how I've been doing cutting.
see, I don't tell Chris my tricks, so that way he can't be teaching recording 101. So I'm going to cut that stuff from the front as well, clean it all up. In fact, I can get his vocal cut off the end here. So I'm doing all this quick editing just on the fly. It's really so cool. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to move this track down here so I got my two vocals together. I'm going to play them both and show you some cool things we can do. So here's just the voices.
And all of a sudden things were different.
I'm going to add a little bit of volume to Chris's
And
harmony.
all of a sudden we were gone. The doors closed behind and the shutters locked up tight.
But I'm going to tell you something else. No two singers stand on top of each other on stage, right? One of the harmony people are either, you know, somewhere to the side or somewhere to the back. So I should actually explain that too, because I think that's a very handy visual to give you. Panning, volume, and EQ work like a cube. So panning, if you can think of a cube, panning is the movement of sound left and right. Volume is the movement of sound up and down, or sorry, forward and back, my apologies, forward and back. So if I have a lav on, but I mean, if I was right up close to you and this was your face, you'd hear me at this level really clearly. But if I stood back here, yeah, when I stand back here, I'm not as loud, right? That's the principle of volume. So volume is a front back thing, and then EQ is a frequency high and low. So if in this case, what I did was I just played with volume, and I'm now going to move Chris's, what would you call him?
Sneaky C.
Sneaky C, yeah. I'm going to move Sneaky C back and to the right, and listen to what happens to Sneaky C here. All right, there we go.
And all of a sudden things were different.
Yeah, it sounds like two guys.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we were gone.
Both of them stand out more.
All right, clear, right? I want to show you another cool thing. We're going to add some reverb here because, believe it or not, in pretty much any of these programs, there's plugins, and I'm going to pick a reverb plugin just to make Chris even more palatial. Is that the word? No, even more, you know, whatever big time word is.
Yeah.
Right. So I know this unit, so I'm going to just drop this down to about 30% and pick the LA studio because, I mean, you know, you're that good. So I'm going to,
The LA studio, we're in it.
that the way, yeah, sure. So let's hear his voice now, just without the harmony, with a little bit of reverb on it.
And all of a sudden things were different.
I'll put a bit more.
And all of a sudden we were gone.
All right, I'm not hearing that.
The doors closed behind and the shutters locked up tight. We all ran for cover from the storm.
Well, I guess I don't have those plugins, so there you go. I would have had to load those, but it appears that I have not. So I guess I can't use that one. Let me see if I have another reverb that I can use.
This VST instruments?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
there you go. That's the one. That's a.
that's one you use?
Yep.
All right, so let me see if that
What is it? RS? Something?
VST, there you go.
Sudden things were different.
Okay.
And all of a sudden we were gone.
Nothing?
The doors closed behind and the shutters locked up tight. We all ran for cover from the storm.
All right. So let's do the same thing. I wouldn't normally put a whole bunch of reverb plugins on, but we'll just run that back one more time, and you can hear their harmonies with
All of a
some.
sudden things were different. And all of a sudden we
Oh,
were
pretty.
gone. The doors
Thanks, Rod.
closed behind and the shutters locked up tight. We all ran for cover from the storm.
Nice, huh?
It's awesome.
And we threw that together in just a few minutes. So, yeah, it says, okay, Chris, I think we're going to have to get together to do a Goche and Connors Brothers range. Very nice, very nice. Sneaky C and the Connors Brothers, all right. Cool.
C and the C brothers.
Thanks, Ross, that's awesome. So, those are a few tips as far as, the fundamental pieces, right? What do I need to get started? And then, to be honest with you, I'm a big believer in just jumping in. Anything that is worth anything to you is probably worth a $300 investment if it matters. So, go ahead and let me get rid of this here. Go ahead and make that investment. You're not going to become an audio engineer overnight. You're not going to be as quick on Cubase overnight. It takes time, right? I've been at this for 27 years now. And have been a performer for even longer. So I'm like you. I just said one day, well, I don't know if I want to spend, $50, $100, $150 in a recording studio. I'm not ready. I want to just record my own stuff. And I'll give you your mic back here, Chris. I'm going to turn these ones off. I want to record my own stuff, and I don't necessarily want to have to rely upon others. So that's why I got into it to start with. As a drummer, you get your, thanks Jody. As a drummer, you get your stuff done, quickly, and then you get to watch the engineer do their things. Well, we've seen, especially during this pandemic, that a lot of engineers have come up into the world now. A lot of people are recording at home without a lot of gear. They're able to do all this stuff with $300. Well, you heard what we just did with this $300, and that's the real stuff. I mean, we use that inexpensive interface and ART USB dual pre-PS. We use the Apex 435 microphone, and Chris used the HP 70 headphones, and that's what we got. So I'm sure that's probably as good as what a lot of people have ever recorded. Maybe some more people are advanced. And maybe one day, with the help of the Connors, we'll do the Recording 102, which really deals with compression, equalization, mixing, corrective EQ, things like that. So, if there's enough interest in it, perhaps we can run that seminar as well. This is the first one I've ever done from my basement, despite delivering this in person hundreds of times. So I really hope that you got something out of this today. Of course, the two big ones are, of course, mixing is panning, volume, and EQ. And and latency, because latency it can take the whole fun out of everything. If you don't get your latency straightened out right when you get started, you're not going to want to do it. But the minute you do, and the minute you record something that you like, it's honestly, it's a game changer. I mean, I built up everything just based on, you can spend $300 and it gets you 90% of the way there. The extra 10,000, 20,000 is just to get that extra 10%. It's ridiculous. It's a great hobby, mind you, but it's a great place to start. Go into Connors, pick up those few things that you need. You may upgrade, you may outgrow them, but you'll not regret getting them if you get this far. If you can get it plugged into the computer, actually plug your stuff in and actually play, it's a game changer. It's a lot of fun. So I'm looking at the monitor here, and I'm going to ask if there's any questions. Hopefully you, like I say, you got something out of this experience today. And yes, for those that are more advanced that are on this this event, you know, I apologize that it's relatively straightforward and basic stuff, but that's what Recording 101 really is. We wanted it to be that way. Yeah. What do you think, Chris? Any comments?
No, not really. I think, yeah, what I was just going to say too is using a DAW, like that may be the scariest part to all of this too, is figuring out how to use the controlling system but it's really just like learning any program. If you learn a new video game, if you learn a new software for something you're doing for work or something like that, a DAW, digital audio workstation, is the same.
Yeah. Bronze Snake said, how much did I miss? All of it, my friend, if you're just tuning in now. But I don't know if the Connors recorded this session.
It should replay on Facebook for a while too.
Great.
If you post it on Connor's Facebook site.
That's right. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool content in here, no matter what level you're at. Chris and I know a lot of fantastic people in the industry, and even they and I tune into other people's sessions to pick up a few things here and there.
Right.
You know, there may be things that you've forgotten. So if you're an engineer already, hope you got something out of that. Great, Ross. I'm glad you liked it. But yeah, like Connor said, we'll keep the repost up on YouTube channel as well. So if you need to reach out for me, we can send a link for you to be able to send questions off to me as well. I'd love to hear from you, and by all means, I'd love it if you're Connor's customers to go in and talk to the guys and girls and get the things you need and get started. In my world, there's nothing more exciting than recording, and you know, I live it, love it. It's a great hobby too. So, do we get into guitar rig with the DAW? No, but since you bring it up, Bronze Snake, guitar rig, just like Reverb, is another plugin, and plugin is essentially a fancy word for the electronic version of something. So Guitar Rig 5 is like having a whole bunch of different guitar amps that are basically at your fingertips that have an emulation of the sound. So what I could do is I have Chris's guitar plugged into input 2, if you recall, and then on that plugin, or on that track, I could select Guitar Rig if I wanted to. So I'm going to go to guitar right now. I don't know if I have a Guitar Rig plugin, but I probably have some plugins that are related to that.
Like a distortion or a
yeah, there's a distortion
flanger or something. Or...
Yeah, so let me just put a grungealizer on. I don't have Guitar Rig on this. And I'll get you to hang on for a second, Chris, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
And I'm going to play back this track with the grungealizer
Oh,
on.
okay.
Okay, maybe I'll start from the
So
beginning.
you're putting the grungealizer onto the guitar I already recorded.
That's correct. Let's see here. I'll move this back to the center here. Come on now. Instead of having it on the left, pull it back to the center here. And let's see if we can hear if this grungealizer is doing anything. I can hear some distortion.
Oh, it sounds gnarly.
Yeah. But Guitar Rig is essentially just another plugin that you can use to alter the sound. So maybe we'll change for something else here. Let's go with a Vst Amp Rack. I guess this will be more like the that VST.
There you go. Perfect example.
Yeah. So we just turned that acoustic into a, I don't know, a 90s grunge guitar. And here's the cool thing with that. With plugins, I can turn this on and off. So this way I didn't have to plug into a real guitar amp and record that. And people get spoiled by this quite easily. But almost all my clients would never do this. They want their amps, they want to haul them downstairs, and they want me to plug in, put a mic in front of their cabinets, and it's the only way they'll play. And you know what? That's really cool. If that's what you like, I'm happy to do that.
That's why we still buy nice big loud Trainer tube amps.
That's right, because we like that sound, right? So Yeah, these plugins they come free with the stuff in many cases. So yeah, you're right. The VST guitar rig is just one of these many emulations. Well, I'll put this back to where I had it here, and there we are. And put this guitar back on the left, and play the track a little bit here one more time. All right, back in the Old West, we would record the whole band live off the floor as a ghost, then go in and fill it individually. Is this a good method using the new Tech Software Studios? All right, so we're probably of the same vintage, Bronze Snake. So you can't really see it, but over our shoulder here is a full live floor. And there are people that, for the sake of saving some dollars, they feel they get a vibe by playing together. And they also get a vibe from the room. I'll try to give you a bit of an idea here. We'll turn some lights on. Because this, you're right, in the studio, this is a very commonly used portion of the room. So over here, there's some drums. There's some panels on the wall to, dampen and control the room. There's pianos and all the rest. So the idea is that performance is what is everything. And if that means that you got to go live off the floor to get that performance, well, if you play with a band, the band kind of speeds up, slows down together. They're a tight unit, and you get a vibe from that. There's a different vibe from the drummer coming in and laying his or her stuff down, and then the bassist coming in to lay their stuff down, and so on, track by track by track. It's a different vibe. You're basically not playing with your band, you're playing to the tracks that were previously recorded. It is different. But the piece that you're talking about, if you got a good band that vibes well together, yeah, record 20 tracks live off the floor, bleed in and everything, make mixes of it, and you get a really, really cool sound. And then you go back and do some overdubs and add, things like that. So what I normally do in that scenario, because again, I've got umpteen inputs and umpteen preamps, I'll record everything, including the vocal, and then I'll ditch the vocal track, do all my edits, timing if necessary, clean out the bass tracks. Like when you saw, in fact, I'm going to just go, I'm talking to you and I'm not even seeing the screen here, but I'm going to go back to the screen here for a second and show you things that I would do on this track. So in here where there's gaps of nothing, I would actually go in and edit all that stuff out. I cut these little chunks out of there because I don't want that noise. And same thing I would do, I do some mixes. If you go online, there's a young lady named Zoe who's a drum endorsee for Mapex, and I do all of her mixes. I'll go and take her tom tracks and cut out all the tom stuff because it may be more information than I need or want, and it helps to clean up a track rather than EQ it all out. So the live off the floor vibe is good. It still needs proper mixing, and it still needs subtractive EQ and all that kind of cool stuff, but it's tough to replace that. So when you come to this studio, you can do single tracks, takes a lot longer. You can do live off the floor, save yourself a ton of time and money, or there's pretty much anything you can do. But you're right, that's a cool vibe. Go and do your overdubs, do the vocals after everything's been remixed so the vocals can pop. But yeah, great point. And a lot of us that are old school players and thinkers, that still applies in the new game. So great question. All right, you're welcome. I'm going over this for sure if it's available, and it is available through Connors. It'll be on their web pages, I think definitely YouTube, but probably their other mediums as well. So, okay. Watch to see if there's any other questions quickly here. You guys have been amazing to stick with us for almost 2 hours. I think that's fantastic. Seminars can get pretty beefy and long, but hopefully you've enjoyed it.
It's been a while since we've done a seminar.
I know. Well, I was scheduled to go to Ottawa in March of 2020 and
That's right.
got the message.
That changed a little bit.
Sure did. So normally I deliver this seminar about 30 to 50 times a year, and it's still fun. It's still a lot of fun. All right. So it looks like we're probably okay. I want to thank everybody at Connors for having us today and for making us feel welcome even though we're not there. It's such a great story. You've been partners to Yorkville for decades, and we love having you. I hope that continues for a long time. I want to thank Chris Gauthier for playing guitar. Still my hero, absolutely. Great player, great writer. What's your website, Chris? Do you have a website?
Just the stuff on like SoundCloud. So you could just find all my music on SoundCloud.com. And on the the streaming sites, Apple Music and Spotify too.
Very good. And of course, to get to the root of it all, connorsmusic.ca. Of course, you can go there to buy things. You can go there to see what's going on. They have a great Facebook page as well. Again, thanks to everyone for joining us. Tiago, thank you. This will get me going through the rest of the pandemic. You're right. Lots of learning. Yes, they are awesome. I agree. And always good to us. You're welcome. So I guess we'll leave it there because I think we're going to hit pretty much right on 9 o'clock. And again, thank you so much for jumping in. And I think
Here comes Johnny.
yeah, Johnny's back. So go ahead.
I thought I'd just add like 2 little quick notes. USB dual pre. This is what my dad uses for all his lessons because he interfaces to his laptop for all his online music lessons.
Right on.
And he records tracks here to overdubs and everything using the same interface you were showing tonight. So very cool.
That is wild. Awesome.
We also have the USB dual pre 2, and just to wrap up, I wondered if you could just touch on like what do you get with a dual pre 2 versus the sort of, I guess, original USB dual pre?
Yeah, you get two things as an addition. Number one, they're upgraded preamps. So if you want it right off the hop, get a slightly nicer sound with about 14 dB more gain. And you never know that you were missing 14 dB gain until you're missing it. So it's nice to have that, the little bit better preamps and that extra tone. The other thing is that it actually has drivers. Now, I said driver free is certainly fine, and it is, but you know, I've also loaded other drivers onto the computer so that I can control the interface a bit more for things like latency and stuff. Because there's no drivers, you don't really control the latency, the DAW will. So the drivers that come with the USB Pre 2 are certainly more advanced and you know, will give you a bit more control over the unit. So certainly upgraded with pre's, and certainly the addition of the software as well. And it comes with Cubase, which is very cool. The USB Dual Pre PS does not.
So it gives you your DAW software out of the gate.
You got it. So you probably save yourself $100 plus just getting the DAW for free.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to jump on and thank you guys for doing this.
Our pleasure.
And yeah, we had lots of engagement and lots of viewers on all 3 platforms all through the whole thing. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Our
Thanks for
pleasure,
having us,
man.
John.
That's really awesome.
Great idea.
Yeah, let's do it again.
For sure. Recording 102 coming up.
Yeah, sounds good, man. That's awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess we'll sign off on that note. And yeah, if any other questions come in that I can't answer, I can still go to Ray and Chris and ask on your behalf. So if
Absolutely.
it's something they wake up in the morning or think about overnight, then, you know, call us at Connors, and then we can reach out to Ray and Chris and get the answer for you.
Perfect. That's wonderful.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.